You guys have built quite a brand around these watches.
You just keep showing up, you try every day, you're putting a little bit of experiments in, and now we have that where we can do $60,000-$70,000 in a single day.
$70,000 in a day? Did I hear you right?
That is correct. What I would recommend for first-time entrepreneurs launching a business is get your iPhone out, get a tripod, record your story.
Hey guys, welcome to StartGrow, a show where we inspire entrepreneurs by hearing from stories of people who have actually done it. Today we have with us Reagan Cook, who is the founder of Vaer Watches. Thank you so much for coming today, Reagan.
Thanks for having me, Emily.
So tell me a little bit about your watches.
There's a lot to say. I mean, we started this company, myself and my co-founder, Ryan Torres, founded the business in 2016 in Venice Beach, California. We've been inspired essentially by experience as surfers, being in the water every morning before work and wanting a watch that we could take into the water, into the ocean surfing, and then also wear into the office. And that was the original idea. It's very simple, but it was something to do with building a watch that was affordable, that was around $200, that we could also know was waterproof. So that was a big challenge, and we spent about a year developing, prototyping, trying to get things right, finding the right manufacturers. Finally did it, launched the business in early 2017, and we've been at it. That's now 8 years of growing and selling the product.
So how's the business doing now?
It's doing fantastic. I mean, I think main thing to understand, and when you have that first couple of years, there's that transition of this basically starts as a side hustle or side project. We were both working full-time jobs. As I say, we were going in, we were making all of these plans or ideas in the water, surfing in the ocean, but then getting back and getting into the work day. So it was all evenings, weekends, and you have that experience of saying, okay, when does this project basically go from being something on the side to being, that can support you and be a full-time job? That experience, it took a couple of years. The first year of business, I think we did something like $60,000-$70,000 of revenue in the entire year, which, looking back now is pretty slow growth, but you don't know any better when you're just getting going. And and I think it's just, you just keep showing up, you try every day, you're putting a little bit of experiments in, and, now we have that, that where we can do $60,000-$70,000 in a single day. So it's
Wow.
one of those kind of
$70,000 in a day? Did I hear you right?
That is correct. But I mean,
No
that's
biggie.
not necessarily typical, but it happens, and it's wild.
How long did it take you to get to that point?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, I think probably a couple of years. So it's interesting where you say that first year you're doing, maybe if you're lucky, I mean, first couple of months you might be doing a couple $1,000s a month. I think the first month we broke 5,000 felt like an achievement. Then the first month after that, maybe doing 10,000, you're saying, oh, I think things are moving in the right direction. And I think our first ever November, which was November of 2017, doing 23,000, which to us felt like, oh, we're going to be rich. In retrospect, that's really kind of the perspective of someone who is operating it as a side project. And I mean, for me as a young guy in my 20s at the time, I'd never seen that much money. And I thought that all the problems were solved. Of course,
Dun.
there's a lot more to the story than that. But I mean, in terms of actually taking that progress in those first couple months or that first year, and then transforming that into that period where we're, okay, all of a sudden we're doing $20,000 in a week, then it's $20,000 in a day. And then, as I say, maybe doing a big release or, getting a good piece of press or media and doing, $70,000 or even $100,000 in a day. All of those things are things that come with perspective, but I think it's, you're going to have to make that long-term commitment. You'd be very lucky, in my humble opinion, if you could achieve that even in your first 5 years. I think there's just going to be kind of many weeks, months, and years of grinding, putting in the work, and then hopefully as you figure things out, as you develop kind of that customer relationship, you might get lucky to kind of start to see some of those special days.
So tell me a little bit again from the beginning of your story. You were working full-time somewhere else.
Yep.
And you and your friend decided, hey, we're going to come up with a line of watches and to have it. And how did you guys get them made? How did you find the manufacturers? How did you get the first people to buy your watches?
Yeah, so like everything, an idea is just a start. then there's the actual determination of how can we actually make this sketch or this idea into a physical product. So Ryan and I, my co-founder, had the idea at the beginning of 2016, but it took us an entire year to develop the product before we could actually sell. Now, our product, I think it depends on what you're trying to sell. A lot of things in the traditional world of e-commerce, there's a whole category of e-commerce, which is essentially drop shipping, kind of best exemplified by an Amazon business. You can look for, paper clips or something on Amazon. There's going to be, or battery. Like, so there's certain things that are essentially off the shelf, but there are other things that are very novel. Maybe they have a patent, or maybe they have a unique design feature. That we were kind of somewhere in the middle, where essentially, because we wanted our watches to be waterproof but affordable, waterproof watches are not uncommon, but they're uncommon under $500. People know a Rolex watch, and they know that that is something that they can take in the ocean, no problem. But people also don't want to spend $10,000 on a watch that they can go to the beach with. So trying to push and understand what it took on a manufacturing or assembly scale to do something that was simultaneously durable, as you might expect in traditional luxury, but that was also highly affordable, that was a challenge. And that was, and you would experience that anytime you're trying to create something with a little bit of novelty that no one's ever done before. We had the experience where we would have prototypes sent to us in that first year, and we'd be so excited, and it looked exactly like we envisioned. And then we'd paddle out into the water on our surfboards, and we'd come back, and the watch was completely flooded.
Wow.
And that's extremely demoralizing, because that's after, you spend months of work getting it to that point. And I think we went through maybe 2 or 3 different factories and teams in order to kind of figure that out. Now, we eventually did solve that problem at the end of 2016 and through our sales in 2017. In 2018, the following year, we made a really significant decision in our business, and an unusual one for our category of watches, is to actually bring a significant amount of our supply chain and our manufacturing into the United States. Mm. This was because, in some part, that it is challenging dealing with overseas manufacturers, whether that's Japan, Switzerland, or China, to kind of understand exactly. It's just a communication challenge, where when you do something stateside, or you're able to kind of have a deeper understanding of how the product is built, put together, that created a lot of, I would say, competitive advantage for us. It was a challenge because there wasn't much in the way of manufacturing in the United States at that time. But as we made that transition to U.S. assembly for our watches, which is a big calling card of Vaer, it really kind of helped accelerate our ability to solve additional problems. So the first challenge was, can we make it waterproof? Second challenge is, then we add more and more features, more complexity. And I think if you want to be a product-focused business, a product with some novelty, you have to have a real grasp over your supply chain and a real grasp over your manufacturing. So,
and I have a question also first of all, how did you get, the startup costs to build these watches? Were you guys paying for it out of pocket? Did you guys raise some money to get some credit cards?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. It's one of the things that I think is not widely discussed or talked about, because I think in traditional media, you hear about the successes and you hear big numbers attached to stories, whether that's like a Glossier or a whomever, any of these like e-commerce startup successes, you see big numbers attached. Oh, they've done 100 million, 200 million, whatever, and so on. What is less advertised or publicized in those stories is the amount of money behind it. Mm-hmm. When you have $100 million investment, you should be reaching $50 million or in your first or second year, because that's essentially what the investment expects of you. They're investing you on a valuation that is in the hundreds, if not billions of dollars. So I think that's...
But you have to get to a point where someone believes in you enough, or an organization, or let's say, or a fund, to give you that money. So, but it's kind of hard to do that when you haven't even created the proof of concept
That's
yet.
a great point. But if you look at the last 15 years of e-commerce and retail startups, and you look at the biggest ones, mm-hmm. and then you can mostly find this out. A lot of it is public information, because a lot of private equity or venture funds are public. There's a significant list. Almost everything. I would say maybe 80% of e-commerce brands that have surpassed $100 million have raised significant capital, and many of them raised significant capital at a very early stage. And I think that has a lot to do with relationships, networks. A lot of these companies come from, you know, Wharton or Harvard business schools.
What was your story, though? How did you get that capital?
Well, that's the thing. That's what kind of makes, in my opinion, our story a little bit unique, is that Ryan and I actually started the whole business with our own life savings, which we were in our early 20s at the time, so we didn't have a lot of money. Got the business off the ground with $30,000.
Okay.
That $30,000 bought us about 1,000 watches. And it didn't leave a lot left over. And it's one of the reasons, as I mentioned, that we didn't have a huge amount of sales in that first year, is because you buy all that product in inventory and you have a website, which for us is a Shopify website. But you realize inventory sitting on the shelf, in that case, we didn't have a warehouse, it was even my apartment. You ultimately need money left over to bring people to your website to get the good word out. And obviously, that's kind of, I guess, business 101 is obviously marketing is a critical component to it.
Well, I think it's funny because a lot of people think, oh, I want to start this business.
Sure.
And then they put so much money and resources into the website and they feel like the website is there.
Right.
Now everyone's just, all the sales are going to be made. And what they don't realize
100%.
is that's just a secondary thing, right? When they look you up or into having that, it's kind of, the supporting instrument to that. But really the marketing, it's how do you get the people to that website? And how did you do that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we had that idea that we bought our product, we put all of our money into that. But then, as you mentioned, one of the things you have to realize with your website, which maybe you spend money on. Fortunately, I have a background in design, so we kind of built it bootstrapped and spent just our own time and energy building that website and that store. But realistically, one of the most important things to understand as a new business owner is conversion rate, which is essentially how many people who get to your store, whether it's a physical store or your website, are actually going to check out. And you'll be lucky, especially in the early days, but even as a established brand, you'll be lucky if 1% of your customers convert and check out, which basically means for every 100 people that you get to your website every day, one of them will buy. So you multiply that. So if you want to do 10 sales, you need 1,000 visitors and so on and so forth.
So tell us the secret sauce for getting the first 100 people to your website
well, that is
and
a
making
great
that
question.
one sale.
And that is a great question. I mean, I think it's very hard to do with no money. And hence why we struggled with that in the first 6 months of the business. Which is also why a lot of first-time business owners will take on capital. They'll look for investors, maybe take a loan from their parents or what have you. And that's not a bad idea. What we did is, we were working. Fortunately, we were not paying ourselves. That's another important note. So as you're not paying yourselves, and we were able basically just by working our full-time jobs to save up a little bit. And what we made the commitment to, and what I would recommend as a test, is just putting $50 a day. I don't work for Meta or Facebook, but I can say that it was helpful for our business, is that we put $50 a day and put that into basically Facebook advertising, which is spread across, the Meta network in these days with Instagram and other things, and just said, okay, this is going to kind of make or break the business, because by spending $50 a day and then eventually $100 a day every day, we get immediate feedback, what's working, are people resonating? And that will tell you, I think, probably within a 2-week period, maybe within a month, depending on, how much you want to change, whether or not you have a business, whether you have a product that people want to buy. You will reach thousands and thousands of eyeballs with even $50 of spend. And if you go through that, you may actually realize you don't have a business. And it is a little bit of an intimidating factor, because I think as first-time entrepreneurs and founders, you really tie up your identity to your website, to the product, to the story you're selling. And I think it is a little bit of that jumping off a cliff moment. But I also think that that's a worthy exercise. Whether that's $1,000 or $2,000, beyond everything else you've done, you need to basically, as we're just saying, drive traffic to the site. Do you have a 1% conversion rate? And maybe you have a 2%.
And is that a good number? What's a good conversion rate, would you say?
That's a great question. I think conversion rate will vary. And it actually is one of those things where, as your brand, we've actually seen our conversion rate essentially initially increase significantly, because what is incredible, and again, Meta is one way of growing your business. It's one that we've used, and I think a lot of e-commerce brands rely on. We spend about 60% of our marketing on Meta, and about
When you say Meta, it's Instagram and Facebook, or just
Yeah,
Facebook
exactly.
ads?
Yeah, Meta Display Network, which can cover primarily, you're thinking every Instagram ad you see, but definitely Facebook as well. And there are, as a reminder to young people, there are still a lot of people on old-fashioned Facebook. A lot of people, maybe your parents or older generations, but Facebook is still relevant, in addition to Instagram. But yeah, I think that's something that is an essential ingredient of most e-commerce businesses. There are other ways around it. There are always alternatives. For example, I have a e-commerce friend who very early on in his business made a bit more of an investment in PR and managed to get on Oprah's gift list in his first year.
Wow,
And
how
that
to
had
do
that had a exactly, yeah. So it's one of those things where maybe he paid his PR agency thousands of dollars, where we spent thousands of dollars on Facebook. There's not one set approach. I think Meta or Facebook can fail. Oprah's gift list or a PR agency may fail as well. So there's definitely not a one-size-fits-all solution. I would say, though, my general recommendation for first-time entrepreneurs is if you have $100 to spend, I'd probably spend $60 of it on Facebook and Instagram, about $20 or $30 on Google, which is absolutely critical. And then
when you say Google, this is Google Ads?
Yeah, Google paid ads. So our business is very, as I think most successful e-commerce brands are paid ads oriented.
Okay.
It's
Is it becoming saturated though?
It certainly is, and that's actually a great question and a great point. I don't mean to be pessimistic about that, but in reality, there was a golden era for advertising, paid advertising, which was and we were actually on the very tail end of it. We were a little bit late to the party, if you will, where I think between that 2014 to 2017, 2018 period were the best days. It's where you could really see dramatic growth. Actually, to be honest, one of the biggest significant impacts on the way that Facebook worked is following the 2016 election, because there was so much public backlash for the way in which Meta was targeting consumers, that basically the entire industry and the entire general public was made uncomfortable with it by how well that their algorithm were able to find voters, or in other cases, customers. And from that point on, Facebook essentially tried to dial back, or basically an increase in privacy, which I think is a positive thing, was an actual negative in the effectiveness of Facebook advertising. And I think Facebook, Instagram, Meta, however you want to look at it, has been struggling. And every couple of months they're changing the algorithm. They're also in relationship with how Apple, how iPhones track privacy across apps. These things are maybe a little bit longer down the road as an e-commerce brand owner. You don't have to worry about it. But I can definitely say now is the time to get on Meta, because, as you say, it's always getting more saturated. It's always
but you're kind of contradicting yourself. You're saying
Sure.
now is the time, but yet it's getting more saturated. So
Yeah, I'm saying
it's like settle for the breadcrumbs here.
Yeah, well, yeah. That's right.
What are some other avenues you could kind of see or kind of have some advice? Or what about TikTok?
Yeah, there are a lot of different channels. I think that maybe the takeaway from looking at the experience of Facebook, which again, almost every e-commerce brand over $100 million has spent tens and tens of millions of dollars on Facebook. So take that.
Which is funny because nobody says that, right?
Take that for what it will. Yeah, almost every single brand you've ever heard of or seen spends millions and millions of dollars. And you actually, through page transparency, if you want to look it up, you can actually see the ads. If you go to any company's Facebook page, you can see all the ads they're running.
How do you do that? Is there a secret on there?
Well, you just go to their page. It's honestly, it's not the easiest thing to see, but you can basically navigate through Facebook page. You can click on page transparency, which is a little button, and then you can see what ads this brand is running, and you can look at them all, which is actually a great hack as an e-commerce startup, because say there's a cosmetics brand that's absolutely crushing it with their Facebook ads. You can go to their page, look up what ads they're running, and if you want, you can copy them. That's not against the rules. Or essentially replicate what they have figured out it works. So I think that's actually a nice little growth hack that I've definitely used, and I think other brand owners could use.
We're going to be using it.
Yeah, there you go. One other actual thing to note regarding Facebook ads: do not. This is, if anyone's watching this, I don't know when this is going to air, but do not launch your Facebook ads for a new business in November. Or
is it because of the election right now?
Well, election is especially a time you don't want to do, because it's extremely expensive to run ads during an election period. But you also the cost of ads is seasonal. So as things ramp up closer to Black Friday, the cost of impression, because everyone is eager to drive sales, everyone's really hungry. So this is obviously going to depend slightly on your vertical.
So that's when you have the most competition as well, right?
Exactly. So you're always competing. So it's a very variable thing. I'm not going to go be here and say that running Facebook ads effectively is easy. You can definitely lose lots of money really quickly.
But timing plays a role. So November is the worst month to run Facebook ads.
November is a very dangerous month. And again, I don't want to get too into the weeds here, but typically what you're going to do in the period, if you are a more established brand, is you're going to run a significant amount of expensive and low converting prospecting advertising through September, October, essentially, in the words of e-commerce, filling the funnel, getting people, I may be visiting our website or kind of getting interest in the brand, but not ready to convert. And then typically what everyone does in November is blast them with sale messaging or holiday messaging or new release messaging. So which is basically September, October are to get that awareness up, and November is there to essentially close the deal. So if you're launching a new business...
What about December with Christmas?
Well, that's a good point. I think December still has a part to play, but generally in e-commerce, the biggest day of the year is Black Friday. I think we did $100,000 or more, $120,000 on Black in one day last year. Yeah, exactly. It's huge, and that's maybe even small. I mean, there are brands that do millions of dollars in a single day, tens of millions of dollars, and they actually, as another perspective, some brands spend tens of millions of dollars on Facebook ads just in Black Friday. So you can kind of imagine how
you're competing with these big brands.
You are,
too.
and yeah, you are. You're competing with a lot. So as a first-time brand owner, especially now in an era where I've been advertising on Facebook for almost 10 years. We have kind of a lot of inherent advantage. So it is something where you have to kind of ease into it, but it's maybe better if you're thinking about a launch. You do want to take advantage of the kind of holiday season and sale, but my general recommendation is maybe a new year, or maybe find a holiday or something seasonal that fits with your brand story, that you can link it with something that's going on in the calendar year, and that kind of makes sense with the launch. Just a general recommendation.
What's the best month that you would say?
Best month to launch.
Yeah, Facebook ads.
Yeah, I think it really depends. It is seasonal. So if you're a swimwear brand, a bikini brand, probably would not recommend launching in January.
Right, unless you're on the other side of the equator.
Unless you're selling in Australia.
I think so. We were saying so best time to launch is going to be depending on the brand and the season to that. But I have another question for you, and this is kind of for those who have an idea. The hardest part sometimes is having an idea and actually jumping out of your head and implementing it and creating something from that. And what gave you the courage to do that, or how did that come about for you?
I think starting the business or getting going with it, that's obviously, I've met so many friends, family members who have a half-formed vision of a business they'd like to start.
Yeah. And
I had that as well. You see things in your daily life that are like, why does no one make something just like this? Wouldn't this be great? I think that is we live in a very entrepreneurial age. It's American culture especially is one that really celebrates that idea of starting something new and trying. But even myself, I can say I never took that leap until I've basically formed a partnership. I think it is very possible to be a solo founder, and I give all the credit to the world for those people who are able to do it. But for me, and I think for a lot of other people that I've encountered in this world of e-commerce and entrepreneurship, is having that sounding board, having that person to keep you accountable, and also to kind of balance your weaknesses and your strengths and weaknesses. My co-founder, Ryan, is an awesome partner, and our success is kind of based off of the strength of that partnership. Of course, a bad partnership could also be very quickly the end of a business, but I would maybe start with that as a suggestion is, you have an idea, start shopping it around. Talk to people that you admire, that maybe have skills that you don't have. Like in the case, I was a designer, more of a creative. Ryan was fantastic from a business and logistics standpoint, but he originally, when he came to me with the idea, it was in help maybe as a freelance designer and helping craft a logo, a brand identity, a website, doing product design. And I was so inspired by his passion. Yeah. And also when he kind of showed me the books and said, this is how much most watch companies charge. We can make it for this cheap. I was like, this is a fantastic business idea.
Yeah.
So I think my advice for first-time entrepreneurs is if you have that passion, kind of you could formalize it in a pitch deck, but just kind of maybe make your elevator pitch and start telling it to people that in your life that you admire. And some of them, if you can sell the idea to people who are smart around you, you can probably sell that idea to other people in the United States and around the world. So that'd be my first advice.
Oh, I love that. And how did you know Ryan was the one?
I mean, to be honest, I didn't study business. I didn't go to a business school. So I think within the consumer world or my world, I never really spent too much time thinking about margin or the amount of money that things cost. I just really took that for granted. And Ryan had done the due diligence to say, like taking a look at maybe the popular e-commerce fashion watches that were around in the 2015 period that we knew were doing a lot of revenue. They were doing $60, $100 million. We're like, wow, what a cool company. And then Ryan came to me and was like, those watches cost $4 or $5 to make in China.
Oh my
and
goodness.
I was like, are you serious?
How
Like,
much do your watches
I couldn't
cost
believe
to
it.
make?
I
I'm
couldn't
just
believe
kidding.
it. No, I can tell you. I mean, and so basically I was astounded by that. And his business idea, which I think is brilliant, is to say, well, what if rather than make a watch for $6 and charge $300 for it, what if we made a watch for $60 and charge $300? And what if you're still ultimately making a watch that is profitable and can have money left over for marketing, but with much less. The margin is smaller, and that's kind of why we see ourselves as a value-oriented business. And we've continued to invest in this because the difference between a $6 watch in manufacturing and a $60 watch is absolutely massive. And the real secret of that is when you're making a watch and you're putting $60 of components in it, or even in some of our higher end pieces, $100 or $200 of components, you're no longer competing with $100 watches, you're competing with $1,000 watches. You're competing with Swiss luxury that if you really pull back the curtain, you're realizing these watches only cost, in some cases, $100 to make, and they're costing the consumer $5,000. So as soon as you start to kind of get, at least that was what kind of got my head spinning, is to say, this is an opportunity.
Yeah.
And especially, I'm really inspired by kind of the history of American entrepreneurism. And
you're not from the United States, right?
That's very
you
true.
are Canadian,
That's very true.
They know.
That's very true. Living the American dream, and the idea that in our industry, which is watches, high-end watches, it's very much dominated by traditional European luxury players, German, Swiss, and as well as Japanese conglomerate brands, and they're great. But they're very much a little stuck in their ways, in the same way that it took an American company like Tesla to kind of reinvent like electric cars, and now you see every single other car company following that lead. I thought that was the case that could maybe follow in the watch industry. Warby Parker is another good example, another very successful e-commerce brand that said, why do nice glasses have to cost $400? Why can't they be $100? So brands like Warby Parker, it was more relevant to our story, but definitely even the Teslas of the world, which is kind of this idea of an American reinvention and a kind of to say, hey, like, let's strip away kind of some of this luxury BS, honestly, and give the customer something that is ultimately more valuable. That's been our business strategy, and that was essentially the key pitch that Ryan brought to me way back in 2016.
And you guys have built quite a brand around these watches.
Definitely, sure.
Do you have any other kind of secret sauces you want to share of how you got to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think what your brand represents is going to determine on what your product is all about. I mean, there's fantastic businesses that are selling supplement powders on Amazon. I know brands that are way more successful than Vaer in revenue, and they sell supplements. And there's honestly nothing wrong with that. If you're selling powders on Amazon, probably isn't so much you can do around branding. It's mostly well, maybe there is. Maybe it's just finding the right celebrity endorsements or being kind of operationally great, or maybe just beating other competitors on price. If you're trying to create something, however, that is something that people wear, whether it's jewelry is definitely at the very high end of that. Jewelry would be at the very top. But clothing as well. You really, I think, say you wanted to start, my next business, I want to start a t-shirt company. I'm selling white t-shirts. That's a blank canvas and or a gold wrist band or something like that. When you have a blank canvas like a white t-shirt, it's always going to depend on the story. It's always going to depend on the brand. Of course, there's going to be determinations of fabric. There's going to be determinations of where it's built, but that also kind of reinforces the brand.
So what's the story you've created around Vaer?
Yeah, for Vaer, I mean, I think there is that disruptive American spirit, even though I am Canadian, which is kind of ironic. But I think what we saw as an opportunity is that the most successful watch brands in the world, the most aspirational watch brands of the world, are not very personal. They're big companies that have been around for hundreds of years, and there's not really a face of those brands. You kind of just take it for granted, the Rolexes of the world or the Omegas. We know those brand names, but we don't really know who they are, essentially. And I think as a small startup, that you always have that advantage. You always have that advantage of assuming you're feeling comfortable with it, you're willing to step in front of the camera, or write emails. We sign every email ourselves, which we write all the emails. And that's really important. And another maybe a hack or insider trick is you would be surprised in terms of running ads. What I would recommend for first-time entrepreneurs launching a business is get your iPhone out, get a tripod, record your story of talking to your customer that you want to find about why this white t-shirt brand you just created means so much to you, why you put your life savings into it, and make that your first ad. Put captions on it, by the way. Captions are very important. And also experiment with different hooks. How should you start the ad? The first 1 second is very important. But beyond that, that will probably outperform something with a celebrity supermodel that has all the production that costs $1 million to shoot. Just you speaking to the camera in a very, TikTok style way. Those ads work very well for us. And I know specifically that works very, very well for other brands. And it's, again, it's just essentially adding that layer of authenticity and saying, hey, I am the brand. I am the owner. This is the company that you're investing in. And I think people will resonate with that.
So, and this has been amazing, by the way. Thank you so much for this, Reagan.
No problem.
How about some just, to close it off on any advice, anything else, something that if you could go back in time and tell yourself from everything you've learned thus far with this endeavor, what would it be?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I mean, I think circling back to some of the other suggestions I made, I think it's essentially to act fast and act now. There's no time like the present. Mm-hmm. Your business is going to be determined by your, your kind of ambition and your willingness to move. But there's all of these other trends, as we were talking about with Facebook and Instagram, with TikTok. New channels are arriving every moment, and the next thing is always coming. So if you have that opportunity, I wish, for example, that we started spending money on Facebook in January of 2017 rather than August of 2017.
Okay.
6 months may not seem like a lot, but that was a golden era of Facebook advertising. And maybe if I was looking back 10 years from now, maybe I would be telling myself today, start testing on TikTok, start trying new channels, because it's like you're only one step away from unlocking that next aha moment in the business. So I think it's really just that willingness to move quickly and not really be afraid of essentially trying new things. That's pretty kind of classic advice, but I really think as it relates to things like, for who knows, maybe TikTok won't be around in 3 years. Maybe ads won't really work anymore. Maybe there will be a whole other thing. So there's no time like the present to get moving. And we can see and know that a playbook, from my experience, exists right now. So if you have an idea, this is the time to kind of act on that playbook.
And I always say, I like to quote myself for this. I say perfectionism is the killer of innovation.
That's very true.
And what happens is a lot of people just are so afraid to get started.
Totally.
And so they don't take action. And a few years ago, we actually published a paper where we interviewed these entrepreneurs and investors. I think you were one of the entrepreneurs we actually interviewed. And one of the things that kept coming up over and over again was, if you're not a little bit embarrassed when you bring your product out into the marketplace, you've waited too long. And that's what happens. It's really one of the things that people don't realize, for example, out of every new startup that launches each year, less than 10% make it past the first year. Mm-hmm. Less than 5% make it the first 5 years. And the reason for that is they spend all of their effort, all of their money in creating this perfect product. And then they bring it out to the marketplace and it's terrible. Mm-hmm. And instead what you should be doing is just doing the minimum viable product, the cheapest version of it, toss it out there, get some feedback on it, throw it out there again, get some more feedback. And that's the only way you'll ever create something that people want. But you'll only find that out by actually doing. So I love that you're bringing this in and bringing that lesson, because that's something we're talking about throughout this podcast as well, into having it. But anyways, thank you so much, Reagan, for coming. This was awesome.
Of course.
And we will share your information on the bottom of this video. But anything else that you just want to throw in there for?
No, I completely agree. That's fantastic advice. Now is the time to act. And yeah, it is very funny. I think looking back, there is almost, you would say, a level of embarrassment to some of the first products we ever did. Very simplistic, or the first versions of our website. I am ashamed. I would almost say I'm ashamed of it. But the thing is, when it works, you realize, hey, that was just the first version. And every day is another opportunity to iterate on it. And I think that's completely right.
And I think the first version is always going to be the worst version, right? No matter what. So just get it out of the way now.
Get it out of the way. Yeah, wonderful. Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming, Reagan. We did it. Okay.
Good job. Thanks.